Some weeks ago, we wrote that most of the people in the mining town named Swanford fled in fear. Then we wrote about how it was the dwarf wizard named Pete who arranged for it. He managed to scare people so much that they decided to leave their homes. So, what did Pete use to scare all of the people out of Swanford? What are people afraid of? Well, lots of things, but there are a few things that almost everyone is afraid of. Almost all people are afraid of snakes and flying monsters and fire.
Hello and welcome. So, this is our newest world building video. We are Wild Art Fly Free and we are building a fantasy world. It's really great that you could join us. We are building our world out of stories, and our stories are made from things like plots and scenes and locations and characters. We like it when people suggest ideas in the comments, but you really don't need to. And, also, if you do offer suggestions, please remember that everything that we create is public domain, so anyone can use it. No worries. And especially, please know that we are always interested in your ideas.
But there are a few things that almost everyone is afraid of. Almost all people are afraid of snakes and flying monsters and fire. So, dragons are really made for the job, aren't they? Okay then. How could Pete have accomplished such a thorough job of clearing out the town? The dragon threat must have not only been possible, it must have been plausible. People would need to think that angry dragons were on their way. Would the people of Swanford believe the stories of the dwarf wizard? We have talked about the dragons in the eastern nations of Aldla. The dragons were speculating about expanding their territories to the west. There would be rumors about that idea. Also, people remember past wars with the dragons. At one time in Swanford's history, there had been wars with the dragons. And, dragons are scary. People have the fear of snakes built into them. The same with wildfire. Dragons are snakes with wings that can breathe fire. And, the idea isn't that strange. But, why Swanford? Well, the town is only about 20 days' walk from the border with the Dragon Lands. How far is that for a flying dragon? Recently, we were talking about fear. Lots of people are afraid of the same sorts of things. We fear the unknown, dark places and snakes. And a lot of people fear the uncertainty of chaos. To us here at Wild Art Fly Free, as we play at growing our fantasy world from stories, we have enjoyed having chaos as part of our process. We even invite chaos into our projects, by brainstorming and rolling dice. But in one aspect of our projects, we are more structured about what we are building and we are already quite invested. Well, chaos is less appealing to us. I mean, in our goal of building a YouTube channel and community, we are not asking for so much uncertainty. We are further along the path toward perfection. Well, we hope we are, so our goals are more certain and we have already chosen a path. So, uncertainty and chaos make us fearful, or at least, anxious. And A large source of our uncertainty and anxiety comes from our needing to work with the YouTube algorithm. And well, up to now, we haven't had huge successes. YouTube doesn't seem to want to show our thumbnails to a lot of viewers. Okay. That does make sense. After all, our goal is to create content that no one has ever thought of before. So, it's difficult to describe what we are offering, when we are just inventing it. And, well, not a lot of people are searching YouTube for how to invite chaos into their projects. Okay. We admit it. We are just too weird for the YouTube algorithm. But, we will keep working at it. And, maybe we should try some of our own creativity medicine. We should work at playing with the YouTube algorithm. We can try different things and see how it responds. And as part of our new plan, we want to introduce our brand new baby personification. No, make that a brand new baby monsternification for the YouTube algorithm. Okay. We have been working on a Blender model of a creature that will represent the YouTube algorithm for us. His name is Algo, and he is very mysterious and yes, even scary. But, if we can feed the Algo, maybe we can coax him out and see what he looks like. If we can see how it responds to how we treat it, maybe it will be kinder to us. So, please try pressing the like button, and maybe even the subscribe. Also, we have heard that the Algo really has a taste for comments. So, tell us what you think. Does that make sense? And, if we can build up some numbers, hopefully, we will entice the Algo to showing himself, or herself, or itself. Well, the town is only about 20 days walk from the border with the Dragon Lands. How far is that for a flying dragon? Has anyone been watching for armies marching from the east? And the dragons might have a grudge against the wealthy humans who own so much. It is the humans and the elves that are the true enemies of the dragons. Well, it wouldn't be difficult to think up a story that the wealthy of Swanford might have made the dragon named Namdrafrome angry. Or maybe even Tread or Uvex. Who can understand the ideas of dragons? We should think back to our video for when Pete set his plan in motion for emptying out Swanford. This was all done as a job for the Haylican. And Pete isn't the sort of dwarf wizard who would hurt people or scare them away from their homes without a good reason. But well, Pete is the type of dwarf wizard who would think about the challenge of the job, without thinking about the people who were being scared enough to leave their homes. Pete isn't evil. He is just very, very focused. The idea that he might actually succeed in emptying out the town didn't occur to Pete. He didn't worry about how he was hurting the people, because he just assumed that his plan wouldn't work. Pete is that focused. And then, some time later, most of the people of Swanford have left town. But now, for some reason that we haven't thought of yet, a magical entity is terrifying the few people who remain. The magical entity is from a different plane of existence and is called the Migo. Pete is still in town along with his fellow adventurers, Yixi and Eldon. Also in town is Chugskid. He spends a lot of time in the mines with the mine workers. Chugskid isn't a miner himself. He is the leader of a miners' union. And Chugskid feels a loyalty to his hometown of Swanford and doesn't like that it has been emptied out.
Um. What is fear? Okay, is that question too vague? Is fear too broad of a topic? How about fear of being alone? Does it make sense for someone to always hold a certain specific fear in their heart? So then, Chugskid was left alone when he was a child, and he was afraid. But he stayed alone, so the fear never went away. Now, Chugskid's people have left town and Chugskid is alone again. But then, since his parents disappeared, he has always been alone. And the anger returned. Chugskid did have an axe and he used it. Chugskid remembers being angry, but then he learned that his axe couldn't help him with that fear. His axe would never bring his parents back. The only thing that he could do was be the kind of child that his parents would want. So Chugskid did what was right. You do the right thing because, well, because it's the right thing to do. That became Chugskid's motto. We do the right thing, because it's the right thing to do. This was a truth that no one could argue with. And Chugskid fought for his idea. Of course, we still always had the challenge of deciding what is the right thing to do, but at least, when you decided the right thing to do, then that's what you did. But then, everyone left. And now Chugskid was afraid, but of course, Chugskid was always afraid. And building on top of his fear, Chugskid felt uncertainty and doubt. After all, he had never actually made a rule that goblins wouldn't be part of the Union. Everyone just assumed that goblins wouldn't be part of the Union, and no goblins even suggested it. Well, no goblins suggested it, until, of course, Eeks suggested it. That strange, educated goblin had asked Chugskid. There are lots of goblins in the mines, aren't there? So, how many goblins are in your miners' union? And Chugskid couldn't explain why there were no goblins in his union. And Chugskid had started to think, maybe there should be goblins in the union. Maybe Eeks could help him bring goblins into the union. But then, Eeks left. So many people left. They were afraid of something that didn't make sense.
He spends a lot of time in the mines with the mine workers. Chugskid isn't a miner himself. He is the leader of a miners' union. And Chugskid feels a loyalty to his hometown of Swanford and doesn't like that it has been emptied out. He has been considering how the miners could help to defend it from any threat. And now, it is later. Chugskid is going out to meet the Migo head-on. Unannounced to Chugskid, who thinks that he is alone. Yixi has decided to try to help. Yixi has a friend and ally, Peaks, who is also a magical entity from another plane of existence. Will Peaks be reluctant? Maybe the magical extraplanar entity will not want to go up against another magical extraplanar entity. This will add some doubt and uncertainty to our story. Doubt and uncertainty can always help in a lead up to a story climax. But, then Peaks will come to help and we will have a head-to-head, one-on-one battle between Peaks and the Migo. But, then, a twist. Chugskid has support that we haven't been thinking about. He is a dwarf and the leader of a miners' union. And, just as Peaks and the Migo are seriously into their battle, whatever that will look like. Just as we have a magic versus magic battle of good versus evil, the dwarfs from underground will come forward with iron and magnets. The magic of Opsipudok does not work in a magnetic field, and is even distorted by the presence of ferrous metals. And, while the forces of magic have outlawed iron and magnets, many non-magical dwarfs have their secrets, including pickaxes and swords that are always much better as steel rather than bronze. And, in the support of Chugskid, and for Swanford community, the dwarfs have brought out their secret stashes of steel and iron and even magnets. So, both the Migo and peaks dissolve in confusion. The fear evaporates and, Chugskid is left, surrounded by his dwarf supporters holding pickaxes and swords. And, across from Chugskid, Yixi drops to her knees confused and weakened. She has lost her ally, Peaks. We don't know if Peaks can come back or not. And as Yixi reaches out to her friend, using her own magical talents, her own magic is broken by the iron, steel, and magnets that the dwarfs hold. Not far away, Pete is also shocked with his own impotence. So, this is the true battle. Not between the forces of good magic and evil magic. This is the battle between the Iron Age and the Magic Age. And this is the moment when a force of dwarfs made a stand against the magic users. The arrogant, insensitive wizards who rely on the sacrifice of the peoples. The wizards who force the people to set aside their metal work. The wizards and other magic users who force their beliefs onto the people no matter what the cost. The wizards who the dwarfs will now defend themselves against. So now, this is the start of the revolution and the birth of a legend. Chugskid, the people's magnet, or something else? We want a title for our Dwarf Miners Union leader. Something to stir the imaginations of the working classes. Anyway, when we started writing about this altercation, we had no idea that our story was going in this direction. Now, we are excited. We have been talking about how little baby ideas can come together and grow and become bigger, more powerful ideas. I think that this was like that. So, with that, we will let this story bit sink in and allow everyone to have a say in how it might turn out. Specifically, we want an awesome mythical title for Chugskid as he gets pushed into leading a revolution against all magic users. Does that make sense? Leave your comments in the idea section.
We have been talking about how little baby ideas can get together to become bigger, more powerful ideas. Stories are like that. Sometimes little stories can come together to become bigger, more powerful stories. So we are building our world of Opsopuduk out of stories. Stories are made out of story bits like characters, settings and plots. Another important story bit is conflict. Of course, most of our stories will be on a personal level to our characters. We are, however, thinking about the bigger stories that hold our smaller stories together. So doesn't it follow then, that we need bigger conflicts to build these larger stories? And so, with bigger, more powerful stories gluing our small stories together, we help glue our world together. So does it follow that wars are necessary to define a world? Well, they certainly help define a world's history. When we look through a history book, it is really a list of conflicts. But if we look to the time periods between the conflicts, there are long periods where nothing happened. And to a historian, who is a type of storyteller, there were no stories worth telling. Boo-wah ha ha ha. Excuse my maniacal laughter, but, are we not, now? Evil tyrants who are creating death and destruction for our own amusement. Well, okay, maybe. But, just don't bring these ideas into your real life. Okay. So who then? Who are fighting or might fight in our world? We have just pointed out iron users versus magic users. This is not going to erupt into global warfare immediately, probably. Other big conflicts include the cults of the Harlequin against the Halduring, dragons against ruling classes of humans and elves, many nations against their neighbors, many race groups against other race groups, invaders from other continents or other worlds, bug people, AI robots, angry pacifists. Anyway, we won't have any difficulty looking for conflicts to keep our stories going. And, remember that we don't have any fights with you, do we? What other kinds of big conflicts have we missed? What do you think? Which big conflicts should we focus on now? Please leave a comment in the ideas section below. We are interested. Thank you.